Morrowind. I can remember it in all its vast, ugly, beautiful, frightening, and exciting brilliance. It was a lonely place, but that only made you more adventurous. I played Morrowind pretty much the week it came out, May the 1st, 2002. And I know that this is going to sound strange, maybe to the more younger listeners, but not everybody back then had the internet. And then it was only ever dial-up, and that was pretty horrible. You didn't realise it at the time. It was all that you had. But I can remember downloading add-ons for Morrowind, using the internet on computers in the local library. Who'd think to do that now, eh? Ancient times, 2002, long ago in the depths of history. No, in all seriousness, when I bought Morrowind, opened it, brought it out of the box, put it into my PC and fired it up, I had to play it totally vanilla. No add-ons. Now, the game gave me what I was looking for. Sandbox. That was what I wanted at the time. Now, in the early 2000s, there weren't that many of these sandbox games around at the time. Now, the sandbox games are everywhere these days. So easy to get your hands on. But in 2002, this concept of being able to walk around, do what you want to do, figure it out, it was pretty interesting. I had not seen it before. I'm not saying it hadn't been done before, it had been done before. Of course it had. We'd seen the likes of it in games like the Elite series, and also Ultima. For me, Morrowind was the first fantasy game where I could just wander around, do whatever, get completely lost. I enjoyed the game, but I also found it quite frustrating. Not because it was difficult, I didn't care about that. It was the world itself. It was so cold and strange and, unfriendly. Everyone you talked to just sort of spoke to you like scum, and it all seemed rather odd. I'm not saying I didn't like it, but Morrowind definitely offered up a unique experience back then for a fantasy role-playing game. The elves weren't happy pixie folk who wanted to help you out. No. They were grim, they were fierce, and they were pretty much against you everywhere you went. And instead of pretty oak woods and forests and meadows and plains, you had vast ashland deserts that stretched on, fearsome. It took me a while to get into the game, but once I'd figured it out, I grew to love it and I played it like mad. It was definitely my favourite game at the time. There's no doubt about it. Absolutely. But there was something about Morrowind that got to me as the days and the weeks went by. The world, it was so quiet. There were no birds singing in the trees. The towns and the villages, they were dead. The world, as vast as it was, all 12 square miles of it, a remarkable feat for a game back then. It really was. However, it all felt quite empty. It just felt like there was nothing going on. Maybe that was the idea. I mean, the game is set on a volcanic island. It is a dying land. Nobody wants to live there. I guess it makes sense, but I don't know. Compared to other games I was playing at the time, or games that I had been playing before, games like Baldur's Gate, even the Thief series, there's something missing in Morrowind. I don't know, I wish I could find the words. It just felt lifeless. It just felt empty. It just felt like there was something missing. There was just this little ingredient that other games had that Morrowind didn't. You play a game like Baldur's Gate, for example, and you walk around the countryside and the fields and you'll see animals, you'll see bustling towns. You sneak into a house in the Thief games and you'll see tables spread and you'll see workers going about doing their thing. Morrowind didn't have that. It didn't have the atmosphere of these other games. Little did I know that a few years later, another fantasy RPG was going to be released, and I bought it pretty much straight away. I can remember seeing screenshots of it inside a PC magazine. The game was called Gothic. Gothic 2, actually, by Piranha Bytes. I can remember looking at the pictures and thinking, my gosh, this looks nice. I remember seeing the screenshots of all the pretty forests and the bustling towns, and I remember thinking to myself, I want to play this. I don't know if my computer can handle it, oh my gosh, but I'm going to give it a go. I bought the game within the week. When I got my hands on Gothic, I fired it up, and my gosh, I can remember playing this game for the first time, and I really thought, now this is great. Now Gothic 2, in my opinion, is a pretty interesting game. At the time, I can remember there was this kind of rivalry going on between the two RPGs. Which one was better? Now, this is a difficult, tricky one. Which one was better? Now, Gothic had what Morrowind lacked. It had life. The forests were deep and rich. The trees, they moved in the breeze. The main town in the game, Corinus, it was very much alive. Honestly, I can remember wandering through its streets for the first time, and I can remember thinking to myself, now this is really something quite special. And honestly, it was. I think it was one of the first towns in a game where all of its citizens were programmed with an AI that enabled them to live out artificial lives. The people in the town of Corinus would wake up in the morning, they would go to work. They would go to the local drinking house in the evening. They would chatter, they would do their thing. You'd see people farming the fields outside, a maid cooking a meal in the home. You could interact with the environment, you could pick things up, you could sit down. When you needed to go to sleep, you actually had to go to bed and rest. It had that ingredient that Morrowind lacked. And it's an interesting thing to think about. These two games were competing to give you a great world to live in and enjoy. But at the same time, they were very different games. Morrowind, vast and open. Do whatever you want. Gothic, on the other hand, smaller, slightly linear. You could do more or less what you liked. You were pretty much free to explore to a certain extent, but there were areas of the game locked off and could only be opened by progressing the storyline. In turn, Morrowind was rich, not only in its vastness, but in its lore. Wherever you go, there were books everywhere, steeped in mystical history. This was a large and well-developed universe. Gothic, not so. Simpler world. The lore, not a lot of it. Pretty straightforward. Corinus is an island. It's medieval. It has a traditional medieval style. There are orcs, there are goblins, there are dragons. We've seen it all before. Morrowind, on the other hand, gives you something very different. A pretty much alien world. Morrowind is definitely more interesting. That's for certain. There's certainly a lot to learn as you're exploring its confines. Morrowind is definitely a deeper experience. The gameplay between the two games is totally different. In Gothic, you have to accrue experience and then seek out a trainer, and they will help to level you up. In Morrowind, however, like a traditional RPG, you allocate experience and build up the character yourself. But in Gothic, if you stick to yourself, you're not really going to get anywhere. You have to join one of the factions in the game, become a paladin or a brigand or a mage, and you need the help of the people in the local land. It's fine to go out and kill as many wolves as you like, but you're not going to get anywhere in the game, not without the help of the citizens. In Morrowind, you can solo your way through the game's storyline. And if you like, avoid the storyline altogether. In Gothic, however, you have to follow the story. There's not much else to do. The good old days they were. Now, I do remember there was some rivalry between these two games. But I don't think these games should really be in competition with one another. I really don't. I think the only reason why they butted heads back in the day is because they were the only two games about at the time which offered large open worlds and had a fantasy setting. I think they should be treated separately. They both have their own virtues and values and goodness. But at the time, when I did get my hands on Gothic 2, I found the game refreshing. I really did enjoy the bustling towns and the lively forests. I did enjoy it. I appreciated it a great deal. However, for me, and not many people might like me saying this, I personally think Morrowind wins if there's going to be a war between these two games. Now listen to this. When I did finally get my hands on the internet, my gosh, it opened Morrowind up for me. Morrowind Nexus, good gosh, oh yes. Thousands upon thousands of user-made mods. It just brought Morrowind to life. It just brought to Morrowind everything that was lacking, honestly. Sound effects, additional citizens, new quests, new towns, new settlements, new territories to explore. How about the whole of Tamriel? How about ships that you can navigate across the seas. Yeah, I'm sorry. As far as I'm concerned, Morrowind wins simply because of the scale, its resources, the ability to be able to expand upon it. You can transform Morrowind into any kind of fantasy game you like. But I still have very fond memories of these two games in the early days, the early 2000s, when they arrived on the scene. It was a great time. It was a great time to be a gamer, and I can remember these two really large, remarkable fantasy games. I can remember playing them, I can remember enjoying them, and I can remember how they offered quite different experiences in a good and positive way. Morrowind, vast open world, do as you please. Gothic, smaller but more unique, with a richer, more lively, bustling world. Marvelous stuff. How do these games stand up today? I don't know. I don't think I'm qualified to answer that question because my opinions are going to be manipulated, if you will, by nostalgia. So I'm going to say to you, I think they're both great. I think the best person to answer that question would be someone younger, someone who did not play these games back in the day, someone who doesn't have good old memories and can play these games and compare them to games that are out right now. Oh, there's been so many fantasy games since. My gosh, so many open world games. There are open world games, sandbox games everywhere. They're just all over the place. I think the question of which one is better, I think that question can only be answered by a younger person, someone who's never played the games before. But as far as I'm concerned, I think they're both marvelous, but they should not be compared. They are quite different. Other than outside of the fantasy setting, they're not the same. They're not the same games, not really. They offer very different experiences and should be played and enjoyed as such. Now, I have been playing Morrowind and I've been playing Gothic 2 again as of making this video. Not just to record footage, but because I wanted to play them again. I wanted to experience the games again. Now, I enjoy retro graphics. I like games with old graphics. I'm not someone who needs up-to-date graphics to enjoy a game. Now, I think Morrowind looks good, even now, but that's just me. And I think Gothic looks good. I've been playing Gothic 2 just as it is, straight out of the box. The same game I played back in the day. And I like it. I think the game looks nice. The controls, my gosh, they take a little to get used to. They do take yeah. But once you get into it, you know, it's fun. It's a hard game. It's brutal, don't get me wrong. My gosh. But I appreciate that. I mean, come on. If you are an explorer, new to the land, and you enter a cave, and there's this huge orc inside, I mean, what do you expect is going to happen? If you're an inexperienced warrior, what do you think the outcome is going to be of such an encounter? Yeah, that's right, you're going to get killed. You're going to get killed really quickly. And so I guess in a way, for a fantasy game, Gothic 2 is quite realistic. But I think the game looks nice. The one thing I'll say, I don't know, should we call it a strike against the game? I would say, yeah, the voice acting. My gosh, yeah. I don't mind the cliche story. Paladins, warriors, fighting against a dragon invasion. The orcs, they're out to get us. Oh my gosh, where have we heard this story before? I don't know. Makes you think, doesn't it? Yeah, well, yeah, Lord of the Rings? No, absolutely not. Let us not speak of that ever again. No, I'm just joking. I don't mind that. I do enjoy all that old-fashioned fantasy stuff. I do enjoy it. But I'll say that I'll draw the line at the voice acting. The voice acting in Gothic, it's a bit goofy. I personally find it amusing, but I think there are some people out there that might not appreciate it. They might think it's a bit bad. I mean, I can remember walking into a farmhouse and the lady there who was cooking a meal for her husband had I think a Texan accent. You guys, you shouldn't be out there fighting all the orcs. You should be at home with your wives or something like that. Yeah, it was a bit weird. It's like for the voice acting, they just, they got their hands on anybody. I don't know. They called in their friends or it was members of the development team. I don't know. I mean, I find it amusing, but there's a lot of people out there that I think that might be bemused by it, shall we say. But I can remember playing in another game, and I'm going to draw this game into this video because I feel like it's relevant because this game was part of the competition. It was a game called Two Worlds. It's a maligned game, infamous. Not many people like it, but it had a similar thing going on. It was trying to be like, well, not like Morrowind, but like Oblivion. which was the big fantasy game out at the time, but at the same time offer a different experience. It gave you a huge sandbox world for you to explore. But like Gothic, it had a little bit of Gothic in it as well. It had a feel of Gothic. It had this sort of a Western medieval fantasy environment, but the voice acting in it, wow, it was something special. Check out videos on the internet, the voice acting. I think the voice acting in Two Worlds beats out the voice acting in Gothic 2 for just sheer goofy nonsense. It's I personally find it funny, but it is what it is. So, at the end of the day, what is there to say? Which game is better? Well, not many people are going to like me saying this, but I'm going to come out with it. I think Morrowind is the better game. But Gothic 2, it offers something different. And I think that, I think you should go ahead, play both games and enjoy them. They're out there. I actually think they're better than a lot of modern games. That's just a personal opinion. I think people who've never played them before might find something interesting, something unique in these games. So I say, go out there and give it a go. Why not? If we were to compare these two fine games to works of literature, or more precisely, to two famous and respected writers, Morrowind is William Shakespeare, and Gothic is William Shatner. Thank you for listening. Good luck out there.